Oops, that's me. Hello, everyone. There's a little sneak peek of me. It is time for Off the Hook with Matty D. I am your host, Matt DiNardo. And as I mentioned this morning on Good Morning Richmond, I really am looking forward to today's show because there's this stigma about fly fishing. It's always old white guys or people like me out there on the river fishing, but it's not really that. There are many women who fish, and my guests today, let me bring them in right now, Judy Edwards and Diane Stanley. First of all, thank you so much for joining me. You guys have been fishing for quite some time. This is going to be so much fun. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah. So let's kind of get things going just a little bit here, bring you both up here. Judy, we'll start with you. How did you get interested in fly fishing?
Took an Alaskan cruise back when I was in my mid-30s, and one of the side trips on the Alaskan cruise was fly fishing. And my husband, myself, and one other guy who was actually, he wrote all the words and music for Walt Disney, Bare Necessities. Mm-hmm. He was an elderly gentleman. The three of us hopped on a float plane with two guides, flew to Admiralty Island, hopped out of the float plane. There's seals swimming around us. We hiked into Admiralty. There's federal bear researchers up on the hill across from us with high-powered rifles, and we fished for silver salmon and Dolly Varden trout. These two guys taught us how to cast, and we had just a phenomenal day. Came back, made an appointment with Bob Kramer, who's a local fly fishing legend, took our first lessons, and we've been fishing ever since.
So on this Alaska cruise, you had never touched a fly rod before?
Never touched a fly rod in my life.
Wow. We're going to talk about how you learned fly fishing from Bob Kramer in a second, but I want to get into Diane here. Diane, give me a little backstory here. How did you first get into fly fishing?
Well, I grew up in the country up in the mountains in Virginia and used spinning rods my whole life. But then when I married my husband 6 years ago, he was a fly fisherman, so it looked very interesting, so I picked up the fly rod and hadn't laid it down since.
Oh, that's fantastic. So did your husband teach you, or did you?
Well, I see that was a topic.
See, I told you we're going to jump around a little bit here.
I am a visual learner,
okay.
So for me to learn, I have to put the rod in my hand and let me play around. But technically, I could say that he did start me with beginning fly fishing lessons.
So he started you, but really you were watching him and kind of copying the motion of the wrist, of the arm, and the casting and the timing and all.
Right, and YouTube is loaded with how videos and how to cast. There's a lot of wrong ways and a lot of right ways being taught out there right now. And I'm by no means an expert, but I can catch fish. Fish don't care what the cast look like. I figured that out.
They only care what the fly looks like.
Right.
That's right.
And the presentation, yes.
But so, Judy, you took a little bit more of a traditional, you went to a fly casting instructor with your husband, so you were both learning at the same time, because we joked about it before, I play golf, and the worst thing you ever want to do is teach your spouse to play golf, because you won't have a spouse at the end of the first lesson. So yours was a little bit more enjoyable because you were both making kind of the same mistakes together?
Correct.
Yeah.
And, you first start, after Alaska, we thought, oh, this is going to be easy. And we went out with Bob, we thought, oh, this is going to be easy. And then we went out by ourselves the first dozen times and got skunked.
Yeah.
And called Bob, who gave us some great phone consults. And, over the time, self-taught, you can't ever underestimate the value of a guided trip, because a good guide is a good teacher.
Judy and Diane, I think that's kind of the interesting there, because Diane, I know we're going to get to some of the bucket list trips you've done, going out to Belize, which is unbelievable. You mentioned Alaska as well. Alaska, sometimes that run is like fishing an aquarium. You pretty much can't miss, right? And then you mentioned that when you see some pictures of an amberjack that you caught too, Diane. The guy was like, just cast, and all of a sudden it was game on. That's not normal when fly fishing at all. Those are the days we look forward to, for sure. Yeah. Many days we're just enjoying the scenery. But they say a bad day of fly fishing is better than a good day at work.
Yes.
Right? Although, Judy, you retire, right? So you remember the work days for sure. Diane, I want to ask you this question. What do you get when you're out on the river or out on a boat or in Belize? Like, what is that feeling to you as to why you continue to fly fish?
Well, I'm a big outdoor enthusiast. That's where I live, is outside. So when I'm out there enjoying the sunrise or the sunset out there in God's creation, that's very fulfilling for me.
And how about when you hook up with that fish? What is then the general feeling you have there? Euphoria, I'm sure, for sure.
That's when you forget about everything else. All your problems, all your troubles. Like, I guess it's like any sport, really. If you're really engaged in that, when that fish gets on, that's your main goal, is getting the fish to the boat.
Right.
And especially when they jump out of the water, that's it for me. I love when they jump up and give you a show.
Give you that show.
Yeah.
And then at that time, you
It's
forget
amazing.
everything.
It's amazing. You just really forget about everything.
Yeah.
I still work, so like,
Right.
work doesn't exist when you're out there.
And that, I think, is the most important thing, to be able to unplug, to live in the moment that you're in.
Yep.
Versus, worrying about, I've got to return this email, I've got to call this person, we have a conference call, Zoom, whatever the case, but you're just out of sight, out of mind in that respect.
And I would say this about, our main goal is to get more women into the sport. Empty nest syndrome no longer exists when you have hobbies, interests, and you continue learning. That's what this game is all about. I started not even knowing how to put the line to get the reel turned the right way.
Right.
So you learn. You start at the bottom, and every day you learn.
And when you learn, I mean, you really start to climb that mountain pretty fast, and then you hit the plateau, and then you start to learn some different techniques of fly fishing.
That's right, and that's when the guide, if you have a good guide, that's when they will help you. It's kind of like that tree, and you come to a branch and you go out, you plateau, but then you got to come back and go up again. And so you keep adding and adding and you have no idea where this fly fishing journey is going to take you. I would never believe I would be in Belize on the front of a flats boat with 360 degrees of turquoise water.
We talked off the air, and absolutely, it's something I'm going to do, and we're going to figure out how to get my wife involved, and we're doing it, because she's not a woman who fly fishes, and I think she should. She says it's not for her. I think this is going to convince her to. Judy, so I think Diane really mentioned something important there, where she said, you hire a guide to get you to the next tree branch, back to the stump to continue to grow. And that's what you just said a couple of minutes ago, where you were skunked like a dozen times in a row. It's like, hey, we're having some trouble, and all of a sudden things kicked in further for you and your husband.
They did, and we actually just got back from a trip to the Gunnison Gorge in Colorado. We fished with a company called Riggs, and it was amazing that after we've been fly fishing a long time, we walked out of that trip having increased our knowledge base and our skill base by well over 100%. Those guides were amazing. From the entomology to identifying the flies on the stream to seeing emergers coming up, and we fished a spinnerfall, and every single cast, it's probably an exaggeration, but they would critique and offer suggestions in a super helpful way.
Right.
And we came off that water so much better than we went on, and it's shown because we've been catching more fish than usual when we're fishing here in Virginia.
I think that's important, because what you can take from one stream can translate to another stream, because maybe it is just a change in the way your cast is to lay the fly out easier, or maybe it's, as you said, the entomology of what's going on right now. Oh, look, there's a mayfly, there's a green olive or whatever, so yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, and the tug really is the drug.
Yeah.
It's
So that's what I was going to ask you. So what is it about fly fishing? You've been doing it now, I think 5-6 years, you said?
30.
30? I'm sorry, I missed that, my bad. So what is it that makes you come back day in and day out to get back on that stream?
Kind of what Diane said, it's a meditative experience. And my other sport was, I've kind of aged out, horseback riding, jumping fences, horse showing, that sort of thing. And I like any activity that when I do it, I tune out the rest of the world so that it's just me and the activity. And for fishing, even when you're not catching fish, you're concentrating. You know, where might the fish be? Can I put my fly exactly there? Get the untangle out of the weeds or out of the tree, and then try and put your fly exactly there again, or spook the pool trying to rescue your fly. But yeah, it's meditative, and then when you do hook the fish, it's this totally zoomed in focus, thinking of all the things set downstream, fight them downstream, not upstream, which in Labrador was ginormous if you wanted to keep the fish, and then getting them in the net. And these fish are gorgeous.
Yeah.
There's nothing prettier than a Virginia native brook trout, except maybe a Labrador native brook trout.
Oh, I think that's got to beat a little bit for sure. I mean, just for color and size. I mean,
They're just amazing fish.
Yeah. So you both fish together quite a bit too.
Yes.
So it's not just you're sitting here on our podcast. You guys generally enjoy each other's company. That's the one thing about fly fishing is you may be a couple thousand feet from each other, but you're still having this conversation, and you're loving just being together. The ride up, the ride down, the sitting back on the bank, the cheering each other on or helping each other land a fish. I mean, there is that part of it
And the
too.
sharing what's working. And we actually have a third cohort who had to work today, Barb Fuller, and she fishes with us as well. I think she's in one of the pictures with us.
Up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do. We all fish together, and that's all part of it. We go to lunch sometimes in the middle of the day, and then go back out and fish.
And the memories.
Yeah.
Like the memories, like, hey, Judy, remember that time that fish jumped up out of the water and I scooped him up with that net? Like,
The time the mink
I caught him in the air. He
fish.
jumped, and I'm like, whoop.
And I got him. Speaking of got him, this is an absolutely gorgeous fish here, Diane. This is this a snook or is this a?
It is a snook,
right? Yeah. And
That's another fighting fish.
Fighting fish.
I'll have to tell you an embarrassing story.
Go
about
ahead.
In this same place, I hooked. I thought, I'm from the mountains, so you have trees in the water and tree fishing and all of that. And you put your hook in the tree. So, I thought I had a hang-up on the bottom of the water in Belize where there were no trees.
No
out
trees, no
there.
nothing.
So, I just jerked and was like, I had a fish on the line, but I didn't know it because I'm used to trying to get that off the tree, But I ended up catching another one, so thank goodness, because I would have been upset.
It's very, very, very pretty fish for sure.
They love to fight.
This is a red right here
That's a redfish. That was in Florida in Mosquito Lagoon.
Very nice. So
It was fun.
Because redfish are up and down the East Coast from Florida all the way through Virginia.
Yes.
It's a great fish to catch on a fly rod. They are really, really fun. Bonies.
Bonefish in Belize. He took us back in the flatwater lagoon where the big ones hide because there's no predators.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's just chat a little bit. I'm going to leave that picture back up here. Let's chat a little bit about Belize because one of my questions is bucket list trips. You and your husband own an outdoor company, and you do expeditions, whether it's hunting or there's this beautiful place in Belize. Talk a little bit about that. The fishing there is really second to none with the species of fish, the quality of fish, and then, of course, the weather. As you said, the turquoise water. I mean, how do you beat that?
Yes, safaris, unlimited adventures. We started taking groups of people to Belize about 3 years ago. And you're pretty much guaranteed to catch fish. You can fish 1 day, 3 days, every day, whatever. You just say whatever you want. And El Pescador is Orvis endorsed fly fishing lodge down there. And you just say what you want to do, and they hook you up. And you will catch fish, even if you have never fished before.
And there are different seasons when different fish are running. So you want to talk to either yourself or your husband or call them directly to make sure you're going at the right time of year because you said there are seasons for trophy tarpon versus what we would call baby tarpon. I don't care. Tarpon's a tarpon, right?
Right.
I mean, it's
I call it a tarpon.
yeah. And how was that experience?
Oh man, that's when you learn to bow to the king if you want to keep the fish on, because they jump up out of the water and throw the hook, and you have to put the rod down into the water to keep the tension on the fish, or
Interesting.
he will throw the line,
Wow.
the hook out.
So, and this
And
is
bonefish are the opposite. You let them go. That's amazing fish. I'm like, what do you mean let him go? I don't want to let him go. He's like stripping the line off the reel. The reel's just bzzz, just singing. The line is going like the length of a football field. One of the big ones I caught, he just kept on going. As soon as they stop, they will hit the bottom with their mouth and scrub the hook out on the bottom.
oh.
So when they stop, that's when you put the pressure on them and start reeling. And then if they start, their mouths are soft, so if they start pulling again, you got to let them go again.
Wow.
Which is really different because you want to get that fish to the boat, but
Right, but you've got to play it out.
You got to play with the fish.
Interesting. We looked up. This is one of your favorite fishes ever.
Yeah.
The amberjack, right? And
Jack Crevalle.
Jack Crevalle, sorry. This was in Belize as well, and you said that this fish was pulling the boat.
He was pulling that boat. He's about 3 inches in thick and pure muscle.
Yeah.
And we cast out in the middle of a pod that the water looked like the top of a washing machine, just this feeding frenzy going on. So he just cast out in the middle, and this one took it, and it took a while to get him in. I'm not gonna lie, my arms were pretty tired fighting him, but he was pulling the boat into the wind.
Wow. So very
He
powerful
turned the
fish.
boat, he turned the boat around. It was fun.
That's incredible. One more picture here, and smallmouth right here locally. I mean,
That's the Upper James River, up
Right.
in the Buchanan area.
right. Just
Were you on that trip?
Is that the West trip?
I think so.
Yeah.
We went, Wes Hodges, up in Eagle Rock, Virginia.
Mhm.
Can't believe he settled there, but that's my hometown where I grew up.
gotcha.
But you get one guide per 2 fishermen on a boat, and they're excellent guides. That'll tell you where the fish are, tell you how to catch them. And one part I like is if you have on the right sunglasses, polarized glasses,
You can see.
to see the fish come out of nowhere and take that fly. I love that. I love that part too. It's like, oh, basically you are tricking a fish. They
Right.
think they're getting something to eat, and
Not really,
I
but
know
yeah,
it.
exactly.
It's
right.
not it's not easy to fool a fish. They're pretty smart.
They are, for sure. And the older they are, the smarter
Yeah.
they've
The bigger-
lasted that
The bigger
long.
they are, the smarter they are.
And that's why they're big.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Judy, I want to get to some of your pictures as well here. Oh, this is the three of you. You mentioned Barb earlier. Again, this is your kind of like your threesome. You go out there and this is awesome. This is what, to me, fishing is about. Fishing with your friends.
And that's part of what we're trying to get with the women's program is give women an organization where they can reach out to other women and say, hey, let's go fishing today. We're also trying really hard with the women's program at FFE to bring women in. The women's program is the gateway for them to just fish, because we don't want to have 2 silos in the club. We don't want to have the women's program and the men's program.
Right.
We want to have fly fishing for all. But it's intimidating as a woman to enter the sport. You're the only woman with a group of men, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're afraid of making a fool of yourself. So we're trying to give the women a way to enter without that fear of embarrassment, and then come up with their own group of friends, and we have women's trips as well as you make connections and find people you can fish with.
And so off the air, before we started, I actually told you about a story that's going on here because of Off the Hook with Maddie D, and that we have a nice following even in our newsroom here. Julia, who runs our show in terms of the technical aspect, one of our digital producers, Caitlin, and one of my meteorologists, Jacqueline, they have never held a fly rod before, and they came to me the other day and said, we want to try. So before, we're going to jump ahead here on my list, but there is that fear fear of the unknown. Can I do this? Can I perform? There's men all around me. How do you explain to somebody to just move past that and give it a shot?
Well, you can always reach out, and I should know it. I think it's women@flyfishersofvirginia.com is my email address. So you can always reach out to me through FFE, and I can set you up with people. I'll put in a plug, as Diane did for Wes Hodges. If you want to just go for a fantastic weekend with great instruction, fantastic food,
Amen.
a beautiful old restored home. Wes is a character. He's an amazing teacher. His guides are amazing. It's a great way. And he has all the gear. So if you wanted to just stick your big toe in and see if you wanted to do this, all you've got to pay for is the trip, tip the guide, and Wes can provide everything else. And it would be like my trip to Alaska. It's such a high quality experience. You're going to want to come back for more.
And Diane, you just said amen to that. So you agree. So Julia, Wes Hodges, we're gonna set all this up. We're gonna teach you on a pond, and just so you all know, I'm looking over Julia right there. And then we're gonna do a guided trip.
Yep.
Thumbs up on that one. This is going to be fantastic. Speaking of Alaska, here is one of your pictures, Judy. Was this the first time you ever held a flower, or do you now gone back?
No, this is actually our second or third trip to Alaska.
Okay, yeah.
We haven't been back in a long time because then we've sort of branched out. That is Crescent Lake in Lake Clark National Park in Alaska. The only way to get to Lake Clark is by float plane. We flew in the morning, fished all day, had to scare a mama grizzly and her family off the beach before they buzzed them with the plane to get them to leave. It's a fascinating place to fish. Well, it's so wild. While you're fishing, one of your guides is standing behind you with a high-powered rifle.
Yep.
Because the bears are behind you. But they're eating too. They're catching the same thing you are, so you're not really in danger,
Right.
except that they're grizzly bears.
Yeah, you're not their food source. There's a million fish in front of them. That's a lot easier to get than the 5 foot plus person standing
Right.
over there. Right.
And
exactly.
there's a group of us. And,
Right.
Alaska is amazing, and
The scenery alone.
the scenery alone.
Yeah. Yeah. This picture here. This is local. You said this is Escataba.
This is Escataba, yeah. Owned by a guy named Derek and his son. His son's a member of FFE. It's a private stream. It's a pay-as-you-go stream. It's, I think, $140 a day. 3 miles, 2 miles of private water. Derek is really good about limiting the number of fishermen on the stream at a time. I think it's 6. It might be 4. He stocks it. He stocks it with, as you can tell, big fish.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful day. Derek's an amazing host.
That's a beautiful fish. It's a gorgeous rainbow. I mean, on any stream, any day. I mean, and Judy, the smile says it all.
That was a large fish.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Okay, you just did this trip. We're going to talk about bucket list trips here. This was one of your...
This was a bucket list trip. This
Now,
is Gunnison Gorge in Colorado. So there's the Black Canyon of the Gunnison. You can fish the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, but it's a 2,000-foot hike straight down. Or you can do the gorge. The gorge is a 1 mile hike, pretty steep down, and then you pick up your guides and your float. There's 2 outfitters a day allowed in the gorge, so you're alone. Our outfitter has 6 fishermen, and then the guide boat, which carries all your equipment from stop to stop. Camp for 2 nights. Shooting stars are amazing. Our tents actually, the tops were screens, so you could see the sky. You'd wake up in the middle of the night and just see a shooting star and roll over and go back to sleep.
That's
and the fishing was phenomenal.
Phenomenal. And browns and
rainbows. Yep.
Browns and rainbows out in Gunnison. And you said you did 3 days on this trip.
3 days, 2 nights. It's the only once you're in the gorge, the only way out is at the other end.
Gotcha.
The last. I've got to get this right. I can't remember. It's like a 900-foot drop in less than a mile.
Wow.
So the rapids for the last section, the rapids, you button up your rod and hang on.
I mean, if you're gonna go out there, you might as well have some fun
Yeah,
too,
get
right?
out of a little white water while you're there.
Exactly, exactly. And that's part of what we were just talking about living in the moment, experiencing the nature around you. As you said, God's creation, Diane.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
It is.
It's incredible. Let me go back to a couple more pictures here. This is this the South? Is that what we're?
That is the High Cimarron.
Oh, where's this?
This is also in Colorado.
Okay.
It's the we were at about 11,000 feet, so we got to Colorado early to acclimate to altitude. Did the gorge, which is at about 7,000 or 8,000 feet, and
Okay.
then they drove us up here. This was a full day of small stream fishing. That to them is a small stream. Great guide, caught a ton of fish. It actually snowed at lunch, and we were there in September. But the snow caused this massive hatch. So the snow stops, we go back out on the river, and there are fish rising everywhere, and they would bite anything that landed on the water.
Wow.
It was amazing.
So it was almost like fishing an aquarium, which
Yeah.
is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful brook trout here.
Piney River, Nelson County. That's a native wild brookie.
And I think one of the things that we're showing here is that you have the ability to get unbelievable fish right here in Virginia, and then take those wonderful excursion trips, Belize, Gunnison, Alaska, Florida, whatever the case may be, and get just a variety of fish. But it's still the same tactic. It's still a fly rod.
It's still the same sport.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we just got to get more women involved. Julia, are you ready for these types of trips? You're going to be going to wonderful locations to fish. I'm telling you.
I'm so ready.
See?
Trout live in beautiful places.
They do live in.
And you don't have to go very far in this state to find water.
And the nice thing is, depending on which way you go, you got brookies. If you go just to the west, and beautiful browns and rainbows.
Right.
You go to the east, you have all the salt as well.
And the smallies in between.
And the small is in between. And then right in the middle where we are right here, you have the shaded striper run.
Right.
So much. So you almost don't have to leave the state, but you do want to leave the state because you want to go for sunshine and turquoise water.
Yeah.
And then there's also,
I will say one thing too, that Judy has gotten into fly tying pretty heavily.
okay.
I can tie flies, but I just don't have the time. Maybe this winter when it's really cold. But anyway, I tied one that was pink and white. I called it a lady slipper. If you live in Virginia, you probably know what a lady slipper is, a
Right.
flower that's in the wooded area.
Yep.
So I named it my lady slipper, and I took it over to this pond just to see, cast it, throw it in the water. I caught this huge catfish. I'm like, what?
People don't
So-
think about catching a catfish on a fly rod.
That's right.
Yeah.
It
But
sure did.
It worked. So let's talk about this. So I think fly tying is really fun. It's very therapeutic.
Very.
It can be extremely frustrating, especially if you're tying some of those very small, like size 18, size 16. I stick with the size 4 and the size 6 because I can't see anymore. But why do you enjoy fly tying?
Same thing, it's meditative.
Yeah.
There's always the challenge of it. I have reached a point now that I'll buy a fly and take it home and take it apart
Oh, wow.
to see if I can then mimic. I'll actually buy two, one to take apart and then one to use as my model to try and tie it. And are you coming to fly tying tonight?
I'm thinking about it, yeah.
Come to fly tying.
Okay, I'll come to fly tying. You just convinced me.
So we have free fly tying lessons through
Through FFA.
Fly Fishers
Yeah.
in Virginia.
And the guys that teach it are awesome. It's a great class.
It really, the wealth of knowledge at FFE is incredible.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And the willingness to share it. It's not only a lot of knowledge, there's so much willingness to share it.
And that's what I think makes it very special. We had Tony Scrimizzi on a while back, and he talked about FFE, and it's one of those things. He said we're trying to get more and more people involved. There's the whole members waiting, but we're slowly matriculating more people in, and that makes it kind of fun here. I want to get to some pictures here. Y'all having fun, fishing, enjoying a beautiful day.
And there we were fishing with Kiki Galvin. So if women don't feel comfortable with a guide teaching them how to fish, call Kiki. She's fantastic. We actually, this particular day, we had casting lessons in the morning and then fished with Kiki in the afternoon on the South.
I think that's great. That's such a fun way to do something. because you get a little learning involved, and then you get to see if the learning worked.
If the learning worked.
Well, we want to get women in just because we love it so much.
Right.
And this is a good opportunity if women really want to sneak in, and learn how.
And, let's face it, the more people we get out using our environment, the more people want to protect our environment.
Right.
And clean rivers are critical. Trout cannot live in polluted water, so.
And I think that's really a great point, because one of the things you'll find with fly anglers for certain is we are more about the conservation aspect,
Yes.
whether it's the species or the rivers. We always preach with my group, carry 2 plastic bags in, because you're going to pick up a lot of stuff along the way to
Yep.
carry it out. Make it cleaner
Make it
than when you
cleaner.
left. Yeah, and that's really important. Judy, I wanted to get to these pictures here because this was one of your favorite. This was another bucket list trip. Tell us where we are here.
We're at Three Rivers Lodge in Labrador, Canada. And it's pretty fun when I tell people I went to Labrador, they just look at me because nobody knows that there is a place called Labrador. Getting to Three Rivers is the first part of the adventure. Clint and I drove to Montreal, and then you hop on an airline, Air Inuit, which is a Inuit airline. It is Native Canadians, Native People's airline. It's a fantastic little airline. Plane is chock full. We stop at several tribal villages, dropping people off. It's how some of the tribes people travel from place to place. And then we ended up in a little town called Shefferville, picked up our float plane, 77 air miles from Shefferville, which is really a very tiny town, to the lodge. And once you're at the lodge, you are, Robin just sold it, but the people he sold it to have contract to over 1 million acres.
Wow.
And they only share it with the Inuit, who have some spiritual sites on it, which we actually flew over, was pretty cool. And you're fishing for native brook trout, and they consider anything less than 5 pounds not worthy of being mentioned.
I mean, I think of a 1 pound brook trout, and
That's
I'm
huge.
jumping off the walls. Right. Yeah. So, and this is.
That one was like 4 pounds, but I had to have its picture taken.
I mean, just look at the smile on your face, the smile on the guide's face there too. But the fish itself, I mean,
They're gorgeous.
Just absolutely gorgeous.
They're just gorgeous, and they're everywhere. You're standing on those rocks, and the thing you can't tell from that picture is in any direction is 4 feet. Actually, the one where I'm balanced in any direction, that's 4 feet of water. So you really have to balance on that rock
rocks.
and land that fish.
Wow, incredible.
It's an amazing experience. We one day they have a camp that's off-site, and we flew to the camp, spent the night, and fished that section of his waters.
Gotcha.
Called the First Rapids.
And the scenery in Labrador, in Gunnison, in Alaska, in Belize, I mean, they're like nothing else, and they're totally different. You're easy to get lost in the wilderness around you or the scenery around you.
The joy of Labrador is that you are completely off the grid.
Yeah.
There is one commercial flight that flies overhead every day at 3 p.m. And other than that, there's no airplane noise.
Wow.
There's nothing. Bad thing, healthcare emergency, you're 75 miles by air.
From the nearest help. I get it. But we don't think that way.
You don't think that way.
Right.
It's just, it is to be that far off the grid, no cell phone.
And how many
service.
people were at Three Rivers Lodge with you? Do you
I
remember?
think there were 10 of us.
So it's a very small
It's very
lodge,
small.
very intimate.
Yep.
And it's just,
And they're only open 12 weeks of the year
that's it.
because the snow clears out in June.
And it's back in September.
It's back in September.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You both keep mentioning this. You do fly casting lessons. You are actively trying to get more and more women into our sport, hobby, way of life is probably the way to call it, because once you get hooked, you can't ever give it up.
Can't give it up.
Right.
So this was our own clinic that we had with Kiki Galvin, and this is at Dory Park?
Mm-hmm.
Dory Park in Henrico County. So Kiki was the official teacher, and Diane and Barb several of our members women members who are experienced fly fishers helped with the casting clinic. And then this fall, I'm going to forget his name, Alex from
McCricker
from
Yes.
DWR put together a casting clinic for women, also at Dory Park, and we went and supported that as instructors as well.
And I'm noticing here, it looks like in that previous picture, I think there's another one coming up, you're actually casting to like discs on the ground to work on accuracy and to get the fly to reach. So, and then is this like a lesson, lunch, and the whole nine? Is
This was kind of a wrap-up.
Okay.
Where to go, where to get further, but this is Kiki, and we did it all that weekend. We did knots, we did, tying your fly. Knots you needed to know, and everybody got to practice them. This was a really special event. One of the club's older male members donated one of his fly rods. Mm-hmm. Somebody else donated a pair of wading boots and waders and vests. And so the women who came who had nothing, we had drawings, and they all left with a fly rod or waders or wading shoes. So everybody left with something for free, something important for free.
Right, something that gets them their next toe in the water, their next foot in the water, or something like that. Right, yeah. Because as we all know, fly fishing isn't the cheapest sport. No, it's not. But it pays back in millions, in my opinion. It's about the solitude. Okay, so we've talked about, so a tip from both of you as to, I think you kind of mentioned a couple things about getting a guide, but maybe something that you learned while starting fly fishing, Judy, then Diane, that you could pass on to a Julia who wants to give this a whirl.
Just try it and recognize, like anything, the first time I got on a horse, it wasn't very pretty. And the first time you cast a fly rod, it's not going to be pretty. And you're going to catch a lot of trees. But if you listen to the Orvis podcast with Tom Rosenbauer, he's probably America's best-known fly fisherman, and he still catches a lot of trees. Just do it. It's incredibly fun. Take the chance. Reach out to us. Look for other women. There are women on YouTube. There's Kiki. You can Google women fly fishing guides and find them. There's actually several in Virginia. Albemarle Anglers has a really active women's program in Charlottesville, and they do a lot of women's trips. So there are lots of resources out there to get you started.
And Diane, what would you give for?
I would say put it on your calendar, because most of the time we talk about we want to try this, we want to try that, but if you don't put it on the calendar, something else will suck up your time. So put it on your calendar to call Judy or whatever, as an example. You got to take the step. It's like you're climbing stairs. You want to get to the top, but you got to take one step at a time. So make the call, reach out, come on out.
And to reach Judy, you gave it a little bit, the email.
I think it's women@flyfishersofvirginia.com.
Okay, I will find that, and we'll make sure we get that pushed in there as well. So, Judy and Diane, I both cannot thank you enough for coming and telling us about your experiences and how you got started in fly fishing, and really, hopefully, coaxing a Julia in to the next, the younger generation of coming into fly fishing.
We've got to keep the younger generation in order to keep the sport going.
That's
so, come join us. We'd love to have you.
Fantastic. Once again, thank you so much. I will see you tonight at the fly tying. You've just forced me to go, and
awesome.
Not that it really was that difficult to force me to go. So, again, this has been Off the Hook with Maddie D. My guests today have been Judy Edwards and Diane Stanley, and I cannot thank them enough for coming on in today. We'll see you next week for another episode of Off the Hook with Maddie D.